Good afternoon, morning, or evening, depending on when you're watching this. But this is for Ms. Turner's Intro Psych class. This is the review for our Unit 2 learning test if you're taking the test rather than doing the project. The format of the test, very similar to our first test. This time there will be 6 true and false questions. And remember, those are always kind of nitpicky, kind of detail-oriented. So make sure you've looked over your review sheets carefully, thumb through that binder again, look for things we've practiced in class, all of that good stuff. There is no matching section this time, but there are 13 multiple choice questions. And those questions are application. We've done this sort of thinking in class, but I don't know, we haven't had really a worksheet over them. But they're definitely things that we have discussed and you have practiced in class. Then there will be 4 short answer questions in which I give you a little scenario and you have to tell me which 2 types of learning you could combine in order to change somebody's behavior. And later on in this screencast, I'll give you an example of exactly what that might be. There's 1 short answer question on operant conditioning, the extension part of operant conditioning, and you all practice this on a little half sheet that I told you to keep. On the top of the half sheet, there were 5 examples of behaviors and consequences, and you had to name them, and then at the bottom it says extension question. And it had you use 2 different types of consequences to achieve an outcome. So you should try to find that because that's what that short answer question will be like. For classical conditioning, there will be a question just like binder page 7 when you have to fill everything out. Again, we'll have an example in a little bit here. And then the essay, make sure that you've looked back at binder page 1 at the essential question and talk, can you, to what degree, going beyond definitions, can you say how well each type of learning would work or why it wouldn't work? And on binder pages 15 and 19, you have graphic organizers that can help you practice for this. On binder page 15, it's a very easy example. On binder page 19, it's a little more complex, and the one on the test will be a little more complex. So that's really good practice. All right, so just some overview questions. Make sure you can define learning. Yes, I want you to know that word for word. Relatively permanent, change of behavior based on practice or experience. Make sure you can give examples and non-examples, and there'll be some coming up here in just a little bit. Make sure you know what a stimulus and a response is, and the question that's kind of hidden in the notes, but we did talk about it. If somebody doesn't respond, is it still a stimulus? And the answer is yes, it is. Such as this video is a stimulus, even if nobody responds to it, but hopefully you will. So here's an example of learned, have I learned, or have I not learned? Have I learned if I drool to meat? Somebody puts a hamburger in front of me. Does my mouth start watering? It does, but is that learning? No, it is not learning. That's a conditioned response, or excuse me, that's an unconditioned response. If I pair the hamburger with a dog whistle, okay, then that might be. But just drooling to meat, that's automatic, so that's not learning. What if I get used to the activity tracker around my wrist? I don't even notice it there because I wear it every day. Is that learning? Absolutely, that's learning. That's a type of habituation. It's there so often I don't respond to it. What if I learned how to ride a bike? I couldn't ride a bike yesterday, but I can today. Is that learning? You betcha. Absolutely, I've changed my behavior. All right, so a few more examples here. This would be kind of like the short answer where you have to, if you can, apply more than one. So for instance, not responding to a fire alarm. If the fire alarm goes off 5 times in a day and we fail to respond to it, okay, a little bit of habituation could set in. We're not responding because it hasn't resulted in anything in the past, okay? Also might be a little cognitive. How am I thinking about, how am I interpreting this situation? Oh, it's just a false alarm. We don't need to go outside, okay? Another example, figuring out how to untangle your partner when connected by string. Okay, if you're all tied up together, how do you get untangled? Well, you could use a little bit of trial and error, see what works. You could use some insight. Aha, I finally figured it out. I'll go get the scissors. Maybe a little cognitive. If I remember about the last time I was, caught in a situation like this. So any of those would work. And maybe even operant conditioning. Once we get untangled, I have my freedom, and that's a reinforcement. Playing the hot and cold game. Okay, this is, again, operant conditioning. This is actually the shaping technique, the acquisition technique for operant conditioning. With our Skittles, we had positive reinforcement when we got closer and closer because we got a Skittle. And then when we messed up, we took a Skittle away, so that would be negative punishment. Analyzing your mistakes. Okay, that's probably, again, another cognitive one at first. I got to think about it. Maybe insight comes into play when I figure it out. And again, maybe I've gotten punished for my mistakes in the past, so there could be a little operant conditioning there. Having a favorite song associated with a certain person, okay, that's going to be classical conditioning. Okay, the song starts out as the neutral stimulus, and hopefully if it's a person you like, okay, they make you feel a certain way, so the person would be the US, and your feeling would be the UR. And then after I match the person with the song over and over again, then I get the feeling when I just hear the song. Very much like the Iowa Fight song example that we did in class. Practicing for a perfect golf game, that's a social skill, excuse me, that's a motor skill. And so we know that trial and error learning is very good for motor skills. And finally, how do children learn their gender roles? Excuse me, for that, again, social learning is going to play a big role in that because they're going to observe that. Operant conditioning might play a role in that. What do they get punished for doing? What do they get accepted for doing? Okay. Classical conditioning, here's an example. Halle Berry's a beautiful actress. She uses CoverGirl cosmetics. If I use the same cosmetics, I will be beautiful too. So it'll be that small of an example that you'll get on the test. And you will need to be able, first of all, to say the US, the UR, the NS, the CS, and the CR. Okay, what they are. Yes, there will be a little T-chart on the test. Use it if you need to. You don't have to use it if you don't need to. But then the rest of them will be blank. And so, and I apologize that instead of train, that should say acquisition and test trial, maintain and extinguish. Now, you have to know those formulas and you have to actually plug it in. For instance, with acquisition, if I repeatedly pair Halle Berry with CoverGirl cosmetics, then I will feel beautiful. Okay, that's acquisition. Notice you did not say if I repeatedly pair the US and the NS. Nope, you've got to actually plug them in. You got to go beyond definitions into application. And then you're going to have to come up with examples of discrimination, generalization, and spontaneous recovery. And remember, for generalization and discrimination, those new stimuli need to be similar to your CS, not the US. So in this case, they need to be similar to cosmetics, not to Halle Berry. Operant conditioning. Make sure you know the types of consequences. We practice this quite a lot. Is it reinforcing or is it punishing? Is it positive, something added, or is it negative, something taken away? Is it primary, known from birth, or is it secondary, something that you learn? Make sure you know the shaping technique. How would I extinguish? We had a whole bunch of problems with extinguishing according to classical conditioning. So what happens if I punish? What happens if I ignore? What happens if I reinforce incompatible behaviors? So if you want to practice, think about a student who reviews and gets an A. Okay, so they're getting something, so it's positive. They're more likely to review in the future, so it's positive reinforcement. And they have to learn that an A is something that's valuable, so it's secondary. So it's all three of those things. Well, and there's the answer. And apparently that's it. So let me know if you have any questions. Be working on those review sheets. They're all practice oriented. People have really regretted not being prepared for this test. Yes, you can remediate, but that takes a lot of effort. So do the best you can. I know you can do well. We've practiced all of this. Good luck.